Hello there, and welcome back to War Thunder. Today I am playing the PB4Y-2, the Chinese one, because I wanna fulfill a challenge, so to say, but I also wanna talk you through what you can do in a strategic heavy bomber, and I want to talk you through an entire battle in just a moment. Now, before I talk about this, there has been a situation that I just want to show you. Some of you will cry at this, some will laugh at this, and some just will call me a full cold-blooded bastard. But here it is. I called out the right bombing point before I went into the dive, hence I am so low. There is a 84 Sky Raider right behind me, but I don't really care because the Sky Raider can do lots of things. It can go even after fighters. It is a much better ground striker than a strategic heavy bomber, and I wanna spade this plane. In fact, I did it in 12 battles. Now, the thing is, this 84 Sky Raider seems to be mad at me, and for all additional problems, a G56 is coming in. I'm switching to gunners, but their shots are in fact coming from the rear. And the G56, well, switches target to the 84 Sky Raider, but kind of sadly doesn't shoot him down. I expected to die here anyway, but more on this in a moment. And the G56 is swinging around. I am losing speed, so I have to go into a dive to reach the bombing point before the 84 Sky Raider is doing this as well, because he just wants to overtake me to get the bombing point, but that's my job, and I really want to get the bombing points. So he uses his guns, and that's not enough. He's even using rockets at me, but I'm not defending myself versus this 84 Sky Raider. In fact, with my last dying breath, I smack the G56 out of the sky. And why? Because the 84 Sky Raider is paying my repair costs. Okay. He went actually on to bomb the bombing point, so I didn't take it seriously, so it's only a game. Why you have to be mad, comrade? So here you can see me initiating a dive, and this plane is pretty slow if you just fly in a straight line. If you just go AFK, it doesn't go anywhere. But if you put it into a dive and you really know the plane, you avoid the hard compression, you can ride along the edge of 600 kilometers an hour in a dive, and you can see I reach pretty much the bombing point before anybody else. I again called the target out. I also informed the rest of my team that I will try to bomb the second and then also attack the third bombing point. Now, when diving, many things happen. First of all, in this particular plane, you make it much more difficult for enemy fighters to abuse the fact that you don't have a dedicated belly gunner, right? Point number one. Point number two, you obviously reach the targets much faster, so you don't waste time. Point number three, you are not falling for the spot the dot game of the enemy fighters, and you use, point number four, the enemy's Axis discipline against them, because they have most of the time only fighters, or the majority of planes are fighters, and they always stick together, they always climb, and they always want to farm the easy bombers first. And very often I do this myself. I just think to myself that this guy just rushing the targets at the bottom, well, he has no influence on the outcome of the game. He will not win the game that way. So let him just farm, and let him just do his thing and farm him later. And that's exactly what I'm counting on. And so I actually gain the RP and silver lines for myself, and I also contribute to a point lead for my team, which later on can be useful. I actually reach the targets, unlike this PE2. But there you can see those two fighters are above me, but they are not going after me because they don't know that I'm there. And that is point number 5. Point number 5, the spotting mechanic. If you are below the enemy, the distance must be much shorter in order for you to get red boxed by the enemy, even if he is directly looking at you. And to spot a dot over this, over the ground, rather than versus the background of the clear blue sky, is much more difficult. And so a lot of people, while they are relatively near to you like 3, 4, 5 kilometers, they just don't see you. But if they are climbing towards you, they can see you miles away, 10 kilometers to be precise, with obviously a good crew. Now, here I have done my job. I have bombed all 3 bombing points, and I also have gotten the bonuses of them getting destroyed, which is very important and gives extra amounts of RP. Now I am transforming myself into a gunship. I don't expect to have any sort of influence here on the map anyway, and I am focusing here on the AA trucks. Why? Because they're easy to destroy, and they also are a serious threat to me. Once my engines get damaged, I have to return to base, and it's not guaranteed that I will make it home in this thing. And this plane is surprisingly good at gunning down those tanks. Now, the next thing is you even can destroy light tanks from the top, from the side, and the rear with those 50 cals, even if you're flying away with them. Something that people just don't know. And I now see that my team has largely collapsed due to the enemy's fighter attacks. And so I'm swinging around for another pass. And the PB4Y-2 is one of the most clumsy and most unmaneuverable planes in the entirety of War Thunder. I'm not kidding. Sometimes it also feels like it is on par with the PB238. But you know, that is a plane twice the size with 6 engines. So yeah, it is pretty clumsy. So how do you play it? Well, that's the thing. A lot of people misplay their heavy bombers, and yes, every plane has a different flavor, but this is roughly what you can expect from a B-17, from a B-24, from the PB4Y, and you have those planes like these throughout multiple tech trees. Obviously the American one, then there is also the French one, and obviously then the captured Japanese one, and obviously here the Chinese tech tree also honors us with one more of those planes. Now you can see I'm racking up the kills. I'm also putting the engines to 0% to have a bit more time on gunnery. From the front, you sadly cannot destroy those light tanks with the 50 cals. So only from the top, the rear, and the side. So now I can see that fighters are nearby, and I try to gun down here the A7M2. I land a hit, and that pops his oil tank, it seems like, but he is busy shooting down my P-47, and he seems to have no interest in immediately going after me. At this point, my 50 cals are also still stock, so they are not upgraded, hence they have a wide dispersion, and also they have a tendency to overheat much quicker. At the end of the video, I will talk you through what I think is the best way to upgrade this plane, module by module, and I'll explain it to you. So this is something that I want you to keep in mind, right? So at the end of the video, this is very important because I usually do not do this, because for me, yeah, it's obvious what you should grind on those heavy bombers that are not really that fast. I see that the A7M is practically out of the fight, and he is coming after me, as well as the Ki-61. Now the next thing is that you have a very high tendency to die in those bombers, because the bomber damage model is tuned to be relatively fragile. Nevertheless, you still can do things to make yourself lasting a bit longer, to make it more difficult for the enemy. First of all, fly away from the enemy, so you reduce the incoming speed, or the relative speed rather. Then you also can just turn, and now the problem is that my gunner is nearly out of ammunition, the rear gunner that is, and that is one bad point to having to rearm. In just a moment, I'm out of ammunition. There it is, gunner reloading. That is one of the side gunners keeping it up, and I think to myself, that is pretty bad timing, but you know, I couldn't really see it coming like this. You can see he's smoking, and he actually takes out immediately the freshly reloaded gunner. I have to pull down a little bit, and then I give him another critical hit. so he's not happy about this. But I also lost the right dorsal gunner, if you will, and I now have to again maneuver the plane to the left, so I can use the left gunners and also the top gunners to take on the Ki-61. The Ki-61 has some nasty firepower as well, but eventually I just rip his plane apart. Sadly, my engine is on fire, and that fire does never extinguish on those planes, and that's a shame, but at least I tried. Obviously, that doesn't really work all the time to rush in, so you have to lose altitude very early on. But here is the problem: I still try to rush here this bombing point, and then I see an enemy dot coming close. And sometimes the Axis also have some players that are ground striking, they're rushing in, and they are robbing you of the stealth that you want to acquire by going low. But the relative speed and his direction, my direction, mean that he doesn't really intercept me before I can drop the bombs on the bombing point. And even though he is rushing towards me, I can drop the base. And this is the very important thing, because I have here the advantage of covering my costs. The Do 335B, on the other hand, not really. I set him on fire, and his 30mm are seemingly armor piercing, so I don't take the damage. I get a lot of, or he gets a lot of sparks on me, and I try to change my course here. I pull up with the key bindings, but then the RE2005 and the A7M are coming in. There is not much that I can do. I try to maneuver here a little bit, but yeah, there is no use to it. So it doesn't really work all the time, but I still did my job, and I took one of the enemies with me. So now let's have a brief look at the plane in hangar. Here is my statistics, service record, and you can see that I only needed 12 battles to spade it with 11 deaths, but I also took 8 enemy players with me and only 14 ground units. That was down to the base bombing. That gives you the most amount of RP and also a good amount of silver lines to cover your maximum repair cost of just over 12,000 silver lines. So what are the modifications that you need? First of all, go for bombs and defensive gunners, because you do not really get that much additional performance out of the plane. They are follow-up, so you have to begin with the SBC Mark 1, then switch to the radiators to unlock rank 2, then go for the LBC 24, then for the FLBC Mark 1, and that allows you to gain access to the 8 1,000-pound bombs. You need 3 per bombing point. Then after this, the bombing point burns down, and you can go on to the next bombing point and even attack the third one, and that maximizes your income. And the 4 2,000-pound bombs actually don't give you a benefit on bombing the bombing points. In fact, it is a disadvantage, so this is all that you need. Then you switch to the turrets and the new 12mm turrets to use the universal belt. In my experience, that's the best one, and the new 12mm turrets actually make sense because you don't have that amount of dispersion, you hit your targets more consistently, and you don't overheat that often. After this, when it comes back to the performance, protect your gunners with the protective vest, so you go back to the tier 1 upgrade. Then you go for the engine injection and cover, the wing repair, fuselage, airframe, and then the compressor and engine at last. So that is my way of upgrading this plane. It has just proven itself. You need the ordnance with the bombs to maximize your income, because you are a bomber, not a fighter bomber, not an interceptor, not a medium or light bomber that can do some fancy additional stuff. No, you are a strategic heavy bomber, but you need to play with the reverse fighter playstyle of an early dive to avoid detection, but you also have to avoid compression in order to not crash, and then you have to avoid the main climbing route of the enemy fighters. It's not a 100% guarantee. There is always this rogue fighter that can ruin your day, but it makes, even in a defeat, a sense that you have not spent that many minutes in the battle for no reason. So this is my point of view. Let me know in the comment section if you think that this was helpful or not. What are your secret tactics to spade such planes? And don't talk about me spading this thing with golden eagles, because that's a bad investment, and it just teaches you a whole new different unique perspective, in my opinion, and I hope that it was helpful to you. So thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Please give this video a like if it is, subscribe if you want to see more, and we'll see each other on the battlefields, on the waves, and in the skies of War Thunder. I